this going here. Y'all come on in, let's keep this thing on the shoe on the road. All right. Plans. Can I push what in? Oh, you were. All right, y'all, let's settle. The teacher is here. Years of teaching in college classes and other classes, you kind of learn to manage a class. All right, good to be with you today. Thanks, Ruth, for having me. I almost didn't come.
Hang on a second.
Okay, hang on a second.
Sing the song.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I trained for opera for 13 years. I thought I was going to do that when I was younger, but I did physics instead. Tell me when you're ready, brother. Okay, I ain't rushing you. I moved the lights up. Is that better? It was pointing at Seth's tummy. And now that he's married, he's put on a little more tummy. That's a good sign. I told him, when I saw Rachel, that she looked really good, and I think a good-looking lady is a good sign. Is a happy lady. And if she's looking good, she's happy. That's good. It's going. All right, here we go. So I'm glad to be here. Ruth invited me last September, and it's a good thing she did because I'm booked right now, pretty much solid about 6 months ahead. Okay, pretty much solid. Unlike Seth, I appreciate him. He's a great guy. My schedule has intensified. I'm on the road still about 25 out of 30 days a month. But my strategy has also changed since I was here last, about 4 years ago. But I almost didn't come back because the last time I was here, the people here said that they didn't need me, and so I thought maybe I shouldn't come out. But I agreed anyway, and I'm so glad I did because I think we're going to be setting up some teams here. And it was so nice having Teresa Manzella talk. I'm a huge fan of Teresa. In Montana, and she kind of gave a testimonial, right? She says, look, we formed all these teams in all the counties. That's exactly what you need to do. And if you don't do that, I'm telling you, there's no other strategy I've found that's working. That is the strategy that's working because the solution is bottom up. But the other reason I came back is because of Glenn Morton. Glenn, as I travel the country, I learn wisdom from people, and I actually made this slide after my last visit. And he says a mountain of corruption survives in a sea of incompetence. And he has another saying I'm taking away from me this time, where he said it's not a marathon, it's a marathon, not a sprint. That's a great one. And then Seth gave another one. He said it's not stolen, it's rigged. And I think those are great takeaway messages. So, I like being with you, Glenn, and you're a good guy. He's been in the fight a lot longer than me. I'm a scientist. I was in academics for about 40 years. I have 60 scientific peer-reviewed publications, cover articles on the leading scientific journals in the world. I made a major scientific discovery in 1990 that made me world famous. I got to travel the world teaching about how electrons behave in a way nobody had discovered before. Got nominated for Nobel Prize in Chemistry. So I have credibility in that area. And I left academics in 1996 because it was just too woke for me. It was too woke. And when I say it was too woke in Cincinnati, Ohio. And Mark Twain wrote about Cincinnati. He said that when the end of the world comes, he wants to be in Cincinnati because it's always 10 years behind the time. Okay. And so for me to think it's woke then in Cincinnati, I'm very conservative. I'm a conservative guy who was just too crazy. Anyway, I was born in Northern California and grew up on an Angus ranch, and I got pictures of that, but I won't waste your time, and went to school in Santa Barbara. And then I was offered by the governor of Ohio a grant to open my laboratory there to do research, and that's what led to my breakthrough stuff. So as a young academic, I thought that was going to be my life. I lived not far from Springfield. You all heard about Springfield, right? Because when Trump and Kamala were having their debate, remember, that's where they were eating the pets. And that turned out to be a real problem in my community because all the pets were evacuating. They were all escaping, and we were being overrun by the animals. But then once Trump got into office, everything was good. We're back. He's been doing great. I lived there with my beautiful wife for 43 years, and so I appreciate Seth noticing his wife, how important she is. I don't know where I'd be without my wife. Our women are good for us. I'm just a farm boy. My wife is who makes me classy. So anyway, I get 3 beautiful children. My oldest daughter, Nellie, everybody knows Nellie. She wears a shirt that says "Vote Amish" on the front, and on the back it says "Ask me how." And so when people come up to her and ask her, she says,
Yeah.
"Your shirt says Vote Amish. What does that mean?"
It say all paper.
All paper. So how do you vote all Amish? All on paper, no machines. That's how you do it. So she gets it. She voted. She votes in the primaries. She votes in the election. She's awesome. She is very smart. She knows what she's doing. But anyway, she's also a great advocate. People know her. So that's my Easter family. And I just found out Sunday morning I'm finally going to be a grandpa. So that's pretty awesome. Okay. All right. So you know who I am a little bit. And I just have to tell you, the best thing to think about me, it was fun listening to Seth kind of go through his history. He had it as a hobby. I had it as a profession. I'm a modeler. I'm a physicist. What do physicists do? You take large amounts of data, you organize it, you build models, and then you make predictions, and you look for anomalies. And that's what I've been doing my whole career. But also, as a teacher, in my pedagogy, I always included real-life situations in my classes. So I've been modeling elections since 1980.
Wow.
And I've been modeling epidemics since 1980. Imagine what 2020 was like for me. Okay, and so I predicted, like Seth, I predicted every presidential election since 2020. I even predicted Trump was going to be the president in 2015, 13 months before the election. And that's when there were 17 people in the primary. And how did I do that? I didn't do what Seth was doing, tracking the rolls and the registrations. I was using differential equations and Fourier transforms. I know it's crazy, but you can invite me back for an hour-long lecture on that some other time. But basically, I'm a modeler. I model sunspots. I model climate. I've been modeling the climate since 1981, when the president of Greenpeace told us at our chemistry department that we needed to burn all the coal we could to stop the upcoming ice age. And people say, Dr. Frank, you have so many graphs, you should change your motto from follow the data to I have a graph for that. Because I've got graphs for everything. I'm always modeling. I don't just study the surface of things, I get to the bottom of it, okay? So anyway, I've been doing this for years. I could talk about this, but I think I want to get into the core stuff. One other thing I do, and it's been, as Seth talked about his journey a little bit, it's been interesting for me, because as I travel the country, churches ask me to preach. And they ask me to preach on science and faith, because I'm a real scientist, and I'm a world-renowned scientist. And they say, well, wait a minute, but you're also a Christian. How do you resolve that? So I love doing that. I preach on Sunday mornings all over the country, comparing about how does science and faith go together. And just to give you an idea what that's like, I say, well, you have to understand what it's like being a scientist reading the Bible. It's a different experience than most people have. So like you'll come up to the miracles, and like when you come up to Jesus' first miracle, making water into wine, people just usually skim right over that one. And I'm like, well, just slow down right a minute there, okay? Just slow down. Because water is H2O, 18 grams per mole. It's got 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. Whereas wine is mostly water, but it's got about 13-14% ethanol, C2H5OH. So how did Jesus get carbon atoms from oxygen atoms to make water into wine. That's a nuclear reaction. That takes 4 Hiroshima bombs worth of energy. That's a serious, serious miracle, okay? And everybody gets all tripped out about, oh, he raised somebody from the dead. Big deal. A little bit of electricity, you can raise anybody from the dead, okay? A little electricity, you got it, right? So it's fun to think about Jesus' miracle. It's fun to think about the Bible from a scientific perspective. Okay. The one other thing, and this has been a real shock on my journey. I was speaking at a large church in Central California, Glad Tidings Church. Some of you might have heard about it. It's a big place there. And I was talking to the pastor at lunch afterwards, and I was telling him, as I've been doing this election work around the country, I had no idea how pervasive child sex trafficking is in our governments. It's been a real eye-opener to me. I had no idea how bad it was. And he said, well, you know what? At my church, we've got a vision. We've got a vision. We're buying a piece of property, about 10 acres. It's a former women's prison because we need the security. We're going to house 250 children that have been formerly sex trafficked and raise them in a secure environment, and it's called Peace of Heaven. And I'm so honored. He asked me to serve on their board. I'm on it with Mary Flynn, Jennifer Flynn's sister, and it's a big deal. We raised $4 million last year. It's going to be going hot this year. We're going to be starting to take our first kids in because we had to renovate the prison. So that's been a real eye opener to me. If you want to help us with that, you can go on to peaceofheaven.life, sign up. And I've been doing this work now since December of 2020. And I never charge for anything I do. And I gave up my income. I remember telling Donna, honey, I want to give up my income for 6 months. We're going to save the country, and then I'll be back to work. Okay. And so I'm donating $100 a month to this. And if I can do that and I don't have any income, what's your excuse? Okay. So help us out, would you? Just sign up for $10 a month. Something simple. We'd really appreciate it. We've been doing that around the country. We're up to a pretty good income going on. So anyway. The other thing that's been really a shock to me is how little our churches are willing to engage this issue. It's been a shock to me, and Eric Metaxas addressed this, Letter to the American Church. It's been a big eye-opener to me, and so I like talking at churches about science and faith, and when they put me in, then I get a chance the pastor meets me, so I'm not a wackadoodle after all, and he'll say, hey, what are you doing? And I tell him about elections. I've been engaging the churches and getting the churches to engage, so that's been a big deal too. The churches led the revolution. They forget that. So how did I get into this? So what happened was in 2020, the election happened, and it was the first one I missed. I didn't know what to do. I was kind of lost. It was 20-1 odds that Trump was going to win this election. I don't get it. And so I was at a loss. But then I got a call the next day from Kathy Barnett in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, and she said, Doug Mastriano has requested an audit. The pointer isn't working very well because of the direction of the screens. Let me change to this kind of pointer. There you go. Doug Mastriano asked for an audit. Well, the next day, Kathy Barnett called me up. She says, can you look at my election for me? We're doing a statewide audit. And she and I had met because I was modeling COVID all around the country with differential equations, and people knew who I was. And so I said, sure, I'll look. And so she emailed me data, and I analyzed it, and lo and behold, whoa, there were a lot of anomalies in their election. So she introduced me to the legislators, Frank Ryan and Russ Diamond. They were the Senate and the House in the state. And I was invited to be on their team of 6 auditors. We got to see anything we asked for. Contrast that, say, with the Maricopa audit, where we were denied all the slunk logs and the critical things that allowed us. We got to see anything. So this is like the first week of December 2020, and first thing I did, because I'm a modeler, is I had downloaded all the data for all the election history for Montgomery County. And we had, I made a model, and I started finding anomalies. And I even found cheating in 2012 and 2016. And they had lawsuits in the state and prosecuted and got convictions on the ballot harvesting that I discovered using my models. So I knew my models were on, but that's a whole other day. Let me talk about that some other time. So I got up to 2020, and I discovered something. And I just want to tell you this one story, because if you can understand this one story, you understand what Seth was just telling you too. So what happens is 6 weeks before the election in 2020 in Montgomery County, a county that's got 500,000 people in the voter rolls, their voter rolls suddenly grew from 500,000 to 550,000 in 1 minute. 500,000 to 550,000 in 1 minute. Actually, it was 50,001 names got added. I have the names and addresses of every one of those people. I know their voting history. I know everything about them. Well, in terms of elections. Well, then I noticed that every one of those new people who had joined the voter rolls voted. Perfect turnout. Okay, of those 50,001 new people. But then by the end of December, every one of them, to the one, were removed from the voter records. So 50,000 people added, they all voted, and every one of them were removed. And that was surprising to me, and I didn't understand it. And so I called Russ Diamond and I said, hey, can I talk to Secretary Bookbar, Secretary of State? We got her on the phone because we had subpoena power through the legislature, and we got her on the phone. And I said, I don't understand. How come these people they just voted? Why did you take them out of the rolls? And her answer shocked me. It actually caught me flat-footed, and I was a little flustered. And she said, because they moved away. I never anticipated that answer. And so I kind of like, well, okay, and I hung up the phone, and I was like, now what do I do? So I started looking them up, and she was right. I looked up about 50 of them, and every one of them had moved away 10 years earlier. And so what was happening is somebody was logging into the voter rolls and putting back into the voter rolls former registered people. These are real people. They're not made-up names or made-up addresses or made-up voters. These are actual former residents put back into the rolls, but because they're not there anymore, people could stuff ballots using those names. And then what has happened is the state was running what they call voter roll maintenance after the election. They got the NCOA records, the National Change of Address records from the post office, and they were automatically removing anybody who had moved away 10 years or earlier. And so it's like a built-in perfect stealing mechanism if you think about it. You go back there, you put people back in, you stuff a ballot form, they're not going to vote, so it's not going to be a problem. And then the state cleans up after the fact for you. So then the question is who did that? Yeah. Well, we had access to the state logs. And we downloaded 2 months worth of the logs. We knew everybody who logged into the state registration system. We knew what they did when they were there. We knew their passwords, their ID. We knew all that stuff. And since we had 4 Supreme Court cases from Montgomery County, we had IT guys scouring those logs looking for our 50,000 cheaters. And it's not them cheating, but 50,000 people who voted. And we discovered an NGO that had done that in 1 minute on Tuesday afternoon. And I can tell you who it is. It's kind of, okay, I'll just tell you. It's the Hillary Clinton campaign. But we also found 32 other NGOs across the state that were doing the same stuff. It wasn't just them. And when I called Russ Diamond when we found that out, and I'm like, I don't understand. This is 2020. What is the Hillary Clinton campaign doing in your voter rolls? I don't get it. And he said, oh, we know what that is. Back in 2015, and he sent me a newspaper clipping, we hired the Hillary Clinton campaign to write an API that automatically allows you to register people to vote at football games, college campuses, and rock concerts and things, and those credentials were still active. But they weren't the only ones that were active. There were at least 32. And just to kind of catch you up on this story, last year I was working with my team in Pennsylvania, and we FOIA'd the government how many NGOs have back-end access to the voter rolls in Pennsylvania. Today, 83 NGOs have back-end access. So in other words, they've given away the registration aspect of their elections to non-government organizations. And any one of them can put people into the rolls anytime. And think about that. That's like a built-in perfect fraud because you can put in people who aren't real voters. Anyway. So I could talk about that, but I don't want to because I want to talk about your state and I want to talk about, but I need you to bring you through a little bit of a process here. I need you to understand what you need to do right now. Because we've learned what to do. It's one thing to say we got this problem, this problem, this problem, but you can't just sit around and whine. We need a strategy, and I've been doing that strategy, and I've evolved a really effective strategy, and I want to tell you about it. But I need to kind of bring you through a process before you'll understand the strategy. So anyway, what happened was We showed the data to Russ Diamond and Frank Ryan and the private committee, and we had everything all nailed down. And I was expecting, so my first realization, my first eye-opener was fraud is real. We had hundreds of thousands of ballots around the state of Pennsylvania we found that were fraudulent. Second of all, when we showed it to the committee, they said, oh, that's horrible, Dr. Frank. We're going to hold a series of public hearings starting the second Thursday in January to address this problem. I said, no, you need to decertify your election because the president is waiting for one state to decertify. I was working with Trump's teams. He wanted one state to decertify the election, and then he would have decertified the whole country election. And he had the authority. Look it up. It's 2018, his 83rd executive order. He gave the federal government the authority to nullify an election with foreign interference, and we had tons of examples of that. But anyway, that's a whole other topic. Maybe I'll come back to that later. But I was expecting them to deal with it, and they didn't. So my second big realization was there's fraud is real, and the legislature didn't want to fix it. And they were a Republican majority legislature, so that was a surprise to me. And so I was kind of mad at them. Now we're about the second week, or maybe second and a half week into December of 2020. So I already had all these computer models I built and developed, and I was studying. So I downloaded all the data from Florida, downloaded all of it from North Carolina and Ohio, and I started running my models. Lo and behold, same stuff was happening there. Exactly the same stuff. So I was looking for a state that would decertify. Certainly Florida would decertify. Come on, they're the good people. That's a red state. So I flew down there, I met with the Secretary of State, showed them the results. They didn't want nothing to do with me, man. It was an uphill battle to even get an appointment. And when I showed them the fraud, they don't even care. And just kind of as a side note, Mr. Lindell and I flew around the country for 6 weeks together in his jet and meeting with Secretaries of States and AGs, hacking into their elections right in front of their faces, showing that their elections are completely transparent. I met with Newts in Montana. Teresa set that up. We were getting signatures for our Supreme Court case, and none of them wanted to stay on the lawsuit. And it was because the Republican Party, the RNC under Ronna McDaniels, was threatening every Republican legislator and every Republican official. If you stay on the lawsuit, you're out. So that was a huge eye-opener to me. It's not just, I mean, you're in a state where you say, well, you're going to blame the Democrats. I'm telling you, Kentucky is probably more corrupt than you, okay? They have 105% of their people registered in Kentucky, okay? It's not a red-blue issue. The fraud is in every state. And the reason it's in every state is because every state now has central control of their elections. Teresa mentioned that earlier, that your state is under central control. That's exactly right. That is what you have to undo. And I know how to undo it, and that's what I'm going to teach you to do. So anyway, very good. So that's what I'm here for. So anyway, what happened was none of the states wanted to listen to me, long story short. It was another eye-opener to me. Then at the end of February, the Supreme Court, we had 4 Supreme Court cases from Montgomery, rejected our cases. And I remember that day I was really depressed. And I went up and talked to Donna, my lovely bride, and I said, honey, our country's gone. The legislature still want to fix it. The secretaries of state still want to fix it. The courts aren't going to fix it. Our country is gone. We've lost our country. And the next day I got a call from Mike Lindell. And he said, hey, I heard about your work in Pennsylvania. I'm doing a movie called Absolute Interference, and I'd like to record your work and put about 20 minutes of it in a movie. I said, okay, great. So I flew down there. I had dinner with him the night before. We didn't talk business. We talked fun stuff. And the next day we showed up in the studio. I walk in the studio. He says, so what do you got for me? I didn't even see my work yet. Okay. And I said, well, I'll just jump in. And I started showing him my work. He stood up and he held his hands up to the camera and he says, stop everything, erase everything. We're going to do a whole movie just on Dr. Frank's work. It's called Scientific Proof. It's an hour long. It documents how I proved state by state that the elections were centrally controlled. I proved it statistically. I didn't have any hard evidence locally at that point. It was my way of just trying to figure out what's going on. And I'm a scientist, so I use the scientific method and numerical methods. So this happened in March of 2021. Suddenly, and then he did put out Absolute Proof, Absolute Interference, and first half an hour of that is also more of my work. During the interview, I was having a fun time with Mike, and at some point I said, see how the statistics work here? Well, that just ain't natural, buddy. And that became kind of like a catchphrase. Everybody knows that ain't natural, but then the president then discovered my work, and I got to be his first keynote speaker at his first rally after he was out of office in Wellington, Ohio. And I got to, in the green room, he says to me, explain to the world how they stole my elections. So I got to explain to the whole world how that was done. But something happened between there and then that I want to talk to you about. So, because you're in Washington and Idaho. So I had, after Mr. Lindell's movie came out, Scientific Proof, it had 12 million views in about a week. And suddenly everybody knew who I was, and I started getting calls from around the country. Dr. Frank, please come help us, something's wrong with our elections. I had 70, I'm not kidding, 70 messages, you know those little purple pads? 70, or messages from people, and they were all the same. Name, county, phone number, please help, our elections are messed up. How do I address 70 messages? I don't even know what to do, so I prayed. I said, okay, God, this is what you want me to do. I'll do it, but you're going to have to provide, because I don't know how else I'm going to do this. So then I went upstairs and told my wife, 6 months, and I'll go back to work. So I went back down, I sat at my desk, and I looked at the 70 messages, and I prayed again. Okay, God, I don't know how to deal with this. I didn't sign up for this. So I don't know how to prioritize these messages. I don't know what to do. Whatever's on top, that's what I'm doing. So picked up the first one. It was from a gal named Tony Shoup in Pennsylvania. We started out of the little PA. And then the next, as soon as I hung up from her, my computer went bleep. And so I said, okay, God, that's on top. Okay. And it was a Facebook message from a lady in Washington, Carol Lee. Some of you might know her in Skagit County. You remember her. And the Facebook message said, Dr. Frank, problems with our elections, please call. And that was it. Okay, God, you put it in front of my face. All right. So that's the next thing. So I picked up, and I got Carol Lee on the phone. I said, yeah, hi, this is Dr. Frank calling. Suddenly hear all this screaming and yelling coming out of the phone. It sounds like a mass murder or something like that. And I'm like, are you okay? Are you okay? She says, oh, Dr. Frank. She says, well, I'm at a ladies' prayer meeting at church. We're all on our knees on a circle on the floor. And we just prayed and asked God to have Dr. Frank call us. And that has been my life. I tell you, I'm always in the right place at the right time. A couple weeks later, I was in Mason County, Colorado with Tina Peters. I'm the one who arranged all that. I'm the one who was right at the beginning. Of course, they didn't let me testify in her trial, but that's a whole other story we could go on. The point is, I don't believe that what I'm doing is an accident. Okay? I think that, how many geeks do you know that have been modeling elections for 40 years? Modeling epidemics for 40 years. That's how people found out about my number stuff, because of all the COVID stuff. And by the way, I'm also an expert in mRNA technology, and I was traveling through the Midwest teaching people about vaccines for 10 years. What kind of a person, how many people you know like this? I think I was made for this. All right. Anyway, that's a whole nother. I think that's enough. You know who I am now, you know what I'm doing. Okay. So, here's the problem, though. In 2021, I sat there with Mike, we were having dinner in March of 2021, and he said, Doug, I've got $30 million liquid in the bank, and I'm going to spend it all on election integrity. And because he was thinking, like I was thinking, once people see the evidence, once the government see the evidence, once the secretaries of states and the legislature see the evidence, they're going to freak out. We're all thinking that way. Well, we were naive. Okay, we were naive, and we had to learn that lesson, that just the evidence, having the evidence and sharing the evidence is not enough. And I had to learn that throughout 2021, and Glenn was probably way ahead, and he's probably laughing at my naivety, because he's the one who said it's not a marathon, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and he understood it. Boy, am I on a marathon. It was supposed to be 6 months, and here I am every day. Wait till you hear what I'm doing now. So along the way, and since he's here, I would like to call attention to this. So I met with Wayne Morrow, now the CEO of John Birch Society, and he saw what I was doing a couple years ago, and he said, Dr. Frank, he says, that's awesome work you're doing. Would you please write a trifold to describe the work you're doing? Because we want to implement it at the John Birch Society. And so I started writing, and my version looks a little different, but it's close enough. And if you want one, you can get one before you go. He asked me to write that, and I thought, well, gee, I'll write down all the work we're doing. I was having a hard time putting it down. So instead, I just started filling page after page with all of the failed attempts at election reform in our country. And I just started organizing all the failed attempts and identifying why they failed. And then I wrote the converse, the opposite of that, and organized it into 7 steps. And boy, oh boy, has it been working. It's an empirical document. In other words, I'm not saying that I sat one night in front of a fireplace with a pipe and got all smarty pants and telling you what to do. I'm telling you, if you don't do these things, you will fail. And it's perfect, it's experiential, and so it's an empirical document. And I want to start these teams in your state, okay? 7 steps teams, and you heard Teresa talking about it. Look at what they've done. Now, I just came from Oregon. Let me just tell you briefly about Oregon. I'm going to come to your data in a minute, but I want you to understand what I'm doing. So I just came from Oregon. Teresa, are you out there? Where are you? The other Teresa. There's another, my Teresa. There she is. She and Stephen's been driving me around. Are you out there, Stephen? Yeah, there it is, over there. What we've been doing is, you know, the first couple of years I was invited all over the country, and I had 500,000 airline miles in 2022. I could be somewhere different every day, because I was still kind of operating in the mode where all I need to do is show people what's going on, and they'll get their act together. That was the way I was thinking. I had to learn that's wrong. I don't do that anymore. I choose where I go. I choose and I target where I go. And to give you an idea, here in Oregon, there's this Cascades Mountains right here. I've been to these counties probably 3 or 4 times each over the last several years, and I've organized teams in most of those counties, and they've been putting together portfolios of evidence. And by evidence, I don't mean statistical evidence. I mean, they actually say, here's a guy who died in 2010, and he voted in 3 more elections afterwards. Here's a person who moved to Kentucky, 10 years ago, and he's still voting here. And by the way, here's his voting record in Kentucky as well. So he's voting in both places somehow. See what I'm saying? So we find actual fraud, and we get hundreds of these cases. But when you organize them into a simple portfolio that we can bring to the county leaders, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. And that's how we are taking back our elections locally. But I was doing that all across the western counties in Oregon. And we were getting all ready about 1.5 years ago to go public with it and then have our counties stand together and tell the state to pound sand. What we did is I arranged for the Department of Justice to sue Oregon. And I arranged for Judicial Watch to sue Oregon. So in the Judicial Watch lawsuit, we proved that their voter rolls were illegal and out of compliance. And in the Department of Justice lawsuit, we proved that their election systems were out of compliance. So now the argument I make to the county is, these are illegal systems. Proven in court. You don't have to comply with a non-compliant system. Oh, so why are you? When you could be saving all this money because you're mailing 3 ballots and only 2 of them are going to a real voter. The other ballot you're mailing shouldn't be in the voter rolls in the first place. So you can save money, you can bring back local patrol. Then the next thing the county guy says, oh, we have to follow the law. You're not following the law. The state's not following the law. You don't have to follow an illegal law. In fact, you're obligated to not follow the law. You're obligated to follow the law better than the state is not following the law. And so, anyway, that's a whole other thing. I'll come back to that. So, we were waiting for the lawsuit to finish, and I met with a sheriff up in Clatsop County. And he says, Dr. Frank, he says, you need to get out to these eastern counties. And I said, why haven't you been going there? And I said, well, because nobody invited me. They all think their elections are okay. So he introduced me to several of the sheriffs. We have great sheriffs in Oregon. And so I went out and I started meeting with the sheriffs and then the parties and then local teams. Before we know it now, we've got a whole bunch of these counties over here that are on fire doing what we're doing. Because they think their elections are okay because they have good leaders. They have a good sheriff. They go to church with their clerk. Their kids go to school together with the county commissioners. And everybody thinks because we have good people, we have good elections. No, that is not true. I'm about to show you that. So anyway, what happened was we've set up this blitz. Teresa called it the blitz. I've been going there 1 week out of every month this year, hitting every county, and we're getting ready to launch. You're going to hear major national splash when about 10 of those counties all say at the same time, we're not using the state system anymore. Wait till that happens, okay? Big deal. All right. And thank you. And it's not just Oregon. This is why I'm on the road all the time. Because I got Colorado, I got Alabama. Alabama? That's a red state. Yeah, what did I tell you? It doesn't matter whether it's red or blue. In fact, 4 nights ago in Alabama, by the way, Alabama is the second least transparent state in the country in terms of their elections. Utah is the only one that's worse. And if you want to get a copy of the voter rolls in Alabama, it costs you $38,000 for a copy of the voter rolls. And so we got our own copies. The first one we got in 2021, Mr. Lindell bought it from the Secretary of State while we were in his office. I remember him writing the check right on the spot. So please buy his pillows. He had, by the way, he started out 30 million positive. He's 40 million red. So help him out. Buy his stuff. He has good stuff. I have his slippers and his robe and pillows. His sheets are awesome. Go on my pillow and buy his stuff. Help him out. They're great stuff. All right. So anyway, where was I? I was having fun. Oh, Alabama. 4 nights ago, their legislature. Wait a minute, Dr. Frank. Their legislature? Yeah, their legislature passed a law that now their voter rolls are cheap. Now you can buy them for $1,000. But they took out all the critical information, so it's worthless to us. That's the Alabama legislature, where 95% of their people vote in person on election day. How about that? Okay. Now, I'm going to talk about something with the JBS. They've got a table back here, by the way. In the back, they've been talking about election stuff way longer. You know the thing I like best about the John Birch Society is they're always right. And they've been right for about 60 years. It's just that they're a fast horse. They see where things are going, and they're telling you where things are going, and so the rest of us are slow. We have to feel the pain before we believe it. I mean, that's kind of the situation. But anyway, in fact, when I spoke at the Cyber Symposium, I was the MC. You were there, Teresa. That's when I first met you, I think. They had a guy there named Kurt Hyde. He's the main election guy and he had predicted what I found 10 years in advance. We did an interview together, and Bill Jasper was there, and he did that interview. It was awesome. So, this is a good organization. So if you want to, but anyway, I'm about to show you some of their data. It's called the Freedom Index. So if you're waiting for your legislature or you're waiting for our Congress to fix this problem, you're living in la-la land. They can't even pass the SAVE Act, okay? And they have a majority Republican. And one of the stories I wish that Teresa had told, except she only had a little bit of time, I was going to come up and try to give her more time. I really was. You asked Glenn, I tried. He said, no, we're on a tight schedule. So I'm going to tell your story. So I was with you, last January, I think it was. And in Montana, this is beautiful Montana, they have 50 state senators. You're one of them. And the Republicans, quote unquote, won the Senate 32 to 18. Am I right?
Yes.
Tell me if I'm wrong. But I've been telling this story all over the country. So they only have a legislative session every other year. And so I could see Teresa's posts on Facebook. I watch her. She's fun to watch. And she's like, oh, I'm so excited we're going to have reform this year. The first week of their legislative session, 9 of the 32 Republicans caucused with the Democrats. Did I say that right? Okay, in other words, this whole idea of R&D, R, Republican, D, Democrat, is BS. Okay? You are being manipulated into thinking if you're voting for Republicans, that's the right thing to do. You need to evaluate your candidates, and your Republican Party isn't serving you well when they're dishing up these people who aren't real conservatives, okay? That's your problem. So you need reform in your party, you need local reform. Bill Brooks back there, he knows I love him, so I'm not criticizing him. The party, he's the election integrity guy for Washington. your party needs to do a better job nurturing new candidates and identifying the correct ones and getting them in office, and they're not doing a very good job. But anyway, I just show you, this is the Freedom Index for the Congress from 2023 and 2024. The blue dots are Democrats and the red dots are Republicans. And what you'll notice, oops, sorry, I clicked the button on accident. Here we go. Here we go. If a person in Congress, the Senate or the House, always vote consistently with the Constitution, they get a 100% rating. If they never vote consistently with the Constitution, they get a 0% rating. And so we're not surprised to see a lot of blue dots over here. But what should surprise you is all the red dots in the middle. That's what should surprise you. These are the defenders of the Constitution up here. These are the compromised people. These are the communists in disguise, and these are the communists, okay? Okay, that's our federal Congress. You want to know why Trump can't get anything done? Okay? Everybody thinks, oh, Trump's in office, so he'll fix everything. The swamp is still there. Okay? Just because we have him there doesn't mean the swamp isn't gone. But just since I'm here, here's Washington, the state of Washington. Look at all of your so-called Republicans, how they vote. I'm sorry, Bill. But it looks like you got issues there, right? You need to address that. Okay, now Idaho. Wait a minute, I thought Idaho was conservative. You're worse than Washington. Look at these quote-unquote Republicans. Okay? You're in big trouble here. You need to take back your party, and you need to take back your elections. You need to do both, okay? So if you're looking, and this is what I hear all the time, oh gee, Dr. Frank, we've got problems with our elections. We're going to lobby our legislature. Fat chance. Okay. Oh, Dr. Frank, we prepared this big report and we gave it to the Secretary of State. Waste of time. You're not going to get anything to happen top down. Okay? Or in Oregon right now, they've got a petition for end vote by mail. And they're going around getting signatures on the Citizens Initiative. I get it. That's great. We can educate the public if there's a problem with their elections. But just think about the logic of this. You're going to sign a petition to get an item on the ballot so you can vote to repair your elections. Amen. Do you think that's going to work? Do you think that's a good strategy? I don't think that's a very smart strategy, okay? So I'm not opposed to the effort because you're doing public education through it, but I don't expect it to give us any remedy. Or like, I love Steve Bernegger in Wisconsin. He's a great guy. He's got something like 22 lawsuits going right now in Wisconsin. He finds fraud, he finds problems, and he sues. He finds problems, he sues. I'm not expecting any of those lawsuits to fix the elections in Wisconsin. But I like it because it exposes the problems in the elections. So it's good education. And I've been in multiple lawsuits around the country, and they teach the public what's wrong, just like I did DOJ and Judicial Watch, right? I don't expect that to fix the problem. But now it's proven in court, these things, and so that improves the public dialogue. So that's part of the strategy. So anyway, I can talk and talk and talk, as you noticed. God made me that way. So what is really wrong with our elections? And this is so important. Most people don't get this. Teresa, you're Teresa Roth?
Teresa Roth, yes.
Yeah. She said it this morning, and she's dead right. She's absolutely correct. The problem with our elections is that in every state in America now, she just discovered it for Idaho, in every state in America, elections are now centrally controlled by the state. There is no function in your election that takes place locally. The clerks think they run your elections, but they don't. If, let's say you want to add somebody to the voter rolls, the clerk doesn't take out a copy of the voter rolls and add somebody. She logs into the state system to add somebody. If the clerk wants to delete somebody from the voter rolls, they don't delete them from the voter rolls. They fill out a form and submit it to the state and hope the state will delete them. So they're not in control of their own rolls. And really, when you think about it, there's three parts to an election. Who gets to vote, how you do the voting and the tallying, and then afterwards how you do the reporting. So what does the clerk do at the end of the day? Does she sit down and say, ooh, let's count up the ballots? No. She takes a stick out of a machine, and she plugs it into another machine that uploads the data to the state. There's nothing that she is doing. So I like, reminding people what it was like when I was in college. We had a central computer on campus. In our case, it was a VAX. And then around campus, we had a bunch of these what we call dumb terminals. They don't do anything. All they do is log into the computer and communicate. All the files, all the programming, everything is taking place in a central computer. Well, guess what? That's the way our elections are now. And all your clerks are just dumb terminals. And I'm not insulting their intelligence. I'm telling you, they don't do anything. Everything is done centrally. But they don't get that. They don't understand that. And so a lot of times I have to sit down with the clerks and show them, oh, who's in charge? Oh, I'm in charge, Dr. Frank. Well, how many people did you add last year? Oh, how many people did you remove? And did you know that it's actually 20 times that many people have been added and removed from your rolls? And they look at me like, what? How can that be? I'm the one in charge. And so I give them a list of everybody that got added and removed, and they didn't do them. It's 20 times bigger list than they did. It's the state automatically doing all this stuff in the background. They don't even know what's happening because they don't have their own copy of the voter rolls. They look at it. What did Stalin say? Stalin said, it's enough that the people know that there was an election. The people who cast the votes decide nothing. The people who count the votes decide everything. When's the last time you counted any votes? That's a problem, isn't it? So, the solution is get it back local. And let me just show you one quick success story, and then I'm going to show you your own data and give you some strategy. So, let's see here. Shasta County, Northern California. Ever hear of them?
Yep.
We have been working so hard there. We've been fighting there. I've got a picture of this. Uh-oh, I lost my picture. I had it ready. Oh, sorry. Forgive me. I usually give 2.5-hour presentations. Okay, where are you? Come on. Here it is. So I got to moderate the California governor debate in November with Laura Logan. That was a fun night. And we discovered that the governor candidates didn't know anything about elections. So the following day, I trained about elections. And now as they're campaigning across California, they're talking about election theory. It's awesome. Well, up in Shasta County, we've got Clint Curtis as our ROV there now. They call him Registrar of Voters. If you don't know who he is, he's the guy who testified before Congress back in 2004, how he wrote the software that the Republicans used to cheat the election that year. Okay? But anyway, he's now there's ROV. He's an anti-machine guy. It's awesome. We got to meet with everyone. We did a tour up there. And let me just show you what their election looks like. And this is what your election should look like in Washington, where you mail a ballot to everybody. So what happens is, by the way, this isn't a wall. This is a pillar holding up the roof. The former Registrar of Voters in Shasta County had built a fence. I'm not exaggerating. A fence around the election building with spikes on the top to keep people out. Okay? So as soon as Clint Curtis got in there, he tore down the fence, all glass windows, set up an observing area, and everything is completely open. He needed an observing area because of the overflow of people that want to help with the election. Okay? And so what happens is, back here in the back right, you can't really see it very well, is where they receive the ballots and do the signature checking. And let's say you question that. You can walk right in with your cup of coffee and sit in the chair right next to him and watch. What are you doing there? Hey, that signature doesn't look like it matches to me. Why are you doing that? The citizens are welcome into the process. And then this is, you're going to totally love this. Then what happens is that there are 6 counting stations here, and they're all being filmed by cameras, and they're being streamed online and recorded too, so anybody at home can watch. And what happens is a citizen walks back here and grabs a bundle of 50 ballots, walks over to one of these counting machines, sets their 50 ballots down in a tray right here. And then they are not allowed to count them. That's illegal. Citizens can't count ballots in California, so they don't count them. But they turn over each ballot one at a time underneath the camera. That's ruffling them to make sure they don't get jammed in the scanner. Okay? And so everybody at home could go, oh, tally 1, tally 2, 1 for Lindell. Everybody at home can do their own tally, right? Okay? Underneath, by the way, this is how they run the election in 2024 in Shasta in the general election. 70,000 voters. Okay? And then after those, each one have been turned over, then the official, because you have to be an official to use the machine, takes the 50 ballots, sets them on the scanning machine, on the scanner, and they go, brrr, you know, they could do something like a couple thousand a minute, anyway, it's just some time already. And what happens is then the tally can be read right there on the LCD screen, so everybody can see what was happening, and then the ballots come out of the machine, and another citizen who, see these nice stools, you can sit right there and watch if you want, or you can, but they're the volunteer, citizen takes those 50 ballots and turns them over each one at a time in the tray. Afterwards, anybody figure out why we would need to look at both sides of the ballot after they've been through the machine? Because the machines have toner in them. Because the machines can print on the ballots. The machines can add down ballot votes. They can do all kinds of things. It's crazy. So we show the ballots before and after, and then the citizen goes back and gets another. And actually, we've tripled the speed of processing of elections because of all the citizen help. Okay? So, in other words, this is a very feasible thing. Now, the Secretary of State of California was very unhappy. And we've been fighting there. We've been fighting there in Shasta County for about 4 years, pretty solid, maybe 5 years, pretty solid. And the AG sent up attorneys, Secretary of State sent up attorneys. Everything we're doing is letter to the letter perfect. We're not breaking any laws. And so this month, April, San Joaquin County, 400,000 voters, they're implementing this system. Okay. How did we get San Joaquin to do this? Because we have a team in San Joaquin County that in 2002 exposed real voter fraud, not statistics. We actually caught the guy with 70 ballots on his kitchen table, okay? And he's a city councilman. Look it up, Lodi, California, Lodi, Shakir Khan. We got a conviction in 2022 of him doing this. And by the way, they only just sentenced him last month, I think. Okay. There is no appetite in the courts to prosecute election fraud. Zero. There's no appetite in the legislatures. You know, you talk to Teresa, she knows better than me, Teresa Manzella. The legislatures, if you promote election integrity, the Republican Party tries to remove you. Okay? Okay? And it's happened all over the country. So, anyway, I think I've done enough. Just want you to show what this looks like. Just to give you kind of one example of the results of our work. Teresa gave a great example. 30 counties, you have teams, and 35 counties, and they've cleaned up their voter rolls. You do not win with statistics. You win when you have a local team that has gathered fraud, gathered the evidence, and gone to their leaders. And then you show the commissioners how they can save money, which they like. You show the sheriffs how the constitutional rights of the citizens are being violated. You get these people to work together. That's where we're going. And I've got multiple states with this happening. So, yes, sir.
I gotta change 2 batteries. So just be nice.
He wants to change 2 batteries. So, how are you? Are you having fun? Good. Well, thank you, sir.
While you're waiting, is there any chance you could go back a couple slides? Because I wanted a picture of that Washington graph that,
Oregon graph, you mean?
no, the Washington that showed the Republicans were voting on that line graph. Line graph. You showed Washington and Idaho.
Oh, I'm about to come up with those.
No, you already did it. You just did it. You showed us how, they were voting, they were getting back,
Oh, this one.
ratings. Yes, thank you. I got Idaho.
By the way, the John Birch Society table has got the Freedom Index there. You can look up all your legislators and see how they're doing.
I have it.
And that's, the legislators don't like it when you expose how they vote.
Funny thing.
All right. He says I'm good, the batteries are just fixed. Are you having fun? I'm having fun too. You know, when you do what God has called you to do, it's a lot of fun. Okay. All right, so speaking of data, let's just jump in. I could talk more about machines and all, but since Professor Clemens is coming after me, he'll do a good job on that. I'm going to let that go. Let's just talk about Idaho for a minute. Now, I can make arguments, but my favorite thing to do is just show people their own data. So I'm just going to show you your own data for Idaho. And this is since 1980. I have more data than this. It's just one example because in a talk like this, there's only so much you can do. 1980 up to 2024 in every general election. Now, this blue curve on top is how many people are in the state of Idaho who are voting age, 18 and older, voting age. So, you used to have around 600,000 people. Now you've got about 1.4 million people of voting age in the state of Idaho. Understand that blue curve? All right, now the black curve is every 2 years, how many people, according to your Secretary of State, were registered active voters in your state. So every 2 years you can see that. And you can see there's some natural variation because some people get excited about the general election and you get more registration at that time. So there's a little bit of trend there. And let me just tell you, from my experience around the country, a clean voter rolls should have about 70% of your voting age people in it. That's a clean voter rolls. If you've got more than about 70%, almost everything above that's people that need to be removed, people are dead, people moved away. But 70% is a good round number. Now the red curve is every 2 years how many people voted in Idaho in the general election. Presidential, midterm. More people vote in presidential than midterms. And I just want you to look at this. I want you to look at this graph, and I want you to just notice something right off the bat that just leaps off the page. You have more people voting now in Idaho than you've ever had before. But your numbers aren't being reported to you that way. Your numbers are being reported to you as percent of registered voters. But notice what's happened. Your voter rolls have been growing way faster than your population. So what's happening is people aren't noticing the fact that you have more ballots coming in now than you've ever had before. Way more than ever before. And I love to set this here. He's the one who first brought my attention to the fact that this didn't start in 2020. Everybody's like, oh, Dr. Frank, 2020, that's a special year because of COVID. Look at your midterm in 2018. You've got a huge surge. We're talking 20% more ballots than you usually get. Suddenly coming in. And what does that correspond to? That corresponds to when you inflated your voter rolls. You created a huge credit line of new names that could be stuck in your elections. That's what you did. Okay? And so notice if your rolls had just followed your population trend, you had 100% turnout in 2020. And near a 95% turnout in 2024. So now, the good thing about this kind of graph is it's easy to understand. I'm just showing you kind of overall statistics. It's good evidence that something is amiss in your elections.
That's exactly when they brought it to us.
Okay.
That's exactly when they brought it to us.
Exactly. It's exactly. She's confirmed. She probably knows more about Idaho elections than anybody. Okay. All right. But the good thing about this is it helps you understand what's going on. Your rolls got inflated, and they're stuffing ballots using those names, just like in Pennsylvania, like the story I told you. The problem is, if you go in public and show this kind of evidence, they're just going to look at you like you're insane. Because it's great evidence, and I've got even better statistical evidence than this, and so does Teresa. But that we don't win when we go public with that evidence. We need a different kind of evidence. How do I know this? I've been doing this every day of my life for 6 years, okay? And the kind of evidence you need, I'm going to help you find. But just one more kind of blurb on this, because a lot of times the counties will say, well, gee, Dr. Frank, sure, down in Boise, they got a problem. No, what did I tell you? Your election is centrally controlled. It's in every county in your state. Every one. And let me just illustrate that for you. Well, I'm going to take that back. I think there might be an exception. I'll show you in a minute. So this is the number of people registered in every county in Idaho, starting from 1990, every 2 years from here. And you can go online if you want and download the data from the Secretary of State and confirm my graphs. But you've got to be a data file. You've got to love doing this. And you've got to have, an obsession with data. but that's what I am. Okay. And so the thing is, it's hard to see the small counties because of the big counties. But if I put them all on the same scale, if I put it on a percentage scale, so that you can see the shape of every county, what do you notice? It used to be random. Suddenly, all the counties shot up. What happened in 2014? That's when the state took away the rolls from the counties. That's the year that the clerks no longer have their own local copy they use. Everything is centrally controlled, and we talked about 10X. Everything is centrally controlled and monitored by central control. Now, you notice there's this one nice, beautiful exception down here in Clark County. You know the population of Clark? 360. It's hard to put names that don't belong on the rolls when you only have 300 or 400 names to keep track of, because every clerk would immediately know. That's why we want small precincts. And we want somebody in charge of each precinct because they know their neighbors. That's the whole election model that we used for hundreds of years here. You have a precinct captain in every precinct. They keep their voter rolls clean. That's how you can have a clean election, because you don't give ballots to people that aren't real voters, and you know because they're your neighbors. Or they're not your neighbors, so you don't give them a ballot. That is what we got to get to that. But I just wanted you to see that this is real, and it's in every county except maybe Clark, and maybe Butte. It's another tiny little county as well. But you get the point I'm making. One more thing I guess I'll show you just to I guess I did do Kootenai County. You think you're okay here? Look at your situation. Look how dramatic, if you compare the population trend to your voting trend. You have the exact same problem, only maybe worse, in Kootenai County than the rest of the state. And you might say, well, we love our clerk, Dr. Frank. She's honest. She has integrity. I have no doubt. In fact, my goal is not to pin this on your clerk. My goal is to put your clerk back in charge of your election instead of the state. Right. So the way we win this is not by screaming at our officials. The way we win this is by working with our officials and showing them why they want to do this rather than what the state is doing them. And there's different avenues. Like commissioners love saving money. When I was showing this data in Shasta County, the day I happened to be talking to the commissioners as a public meeting, the person in front of me was complaining to them that they hadn't drilled a well they were supposed to drill in part of town, but the commissioner said, well, it's $250,000, we're trying to find it in the budget. I got up and showed them the numbers, and I said, the first year you switch to this, you're going to save $250,000. You just bought her well for her. Okay? Commissioners like saving money. I'm not saying they don't have integrity, but they live in the budget world a lot of the time. So that's a great thing. Sheriffs like protecting constitutional rights. And so we go to the sheriffs and we show them the fraud that's happening in their elections. Actual cases of fraud. Dead person who's been voting in the last 3 elections. Somebody who's voting in Texas and in Idaho at the same time. How did that happen? It's not really voting in both places. Somebody's using this name here and stuff invalid. We find those cases, we organize them, we get hundreds of them, but we find 10 juicy ones, and we read them into the public record during the commissioner meetings. It's lovely. Watching everybody squirm, because the fraud is real and nobody knows. Now, if I just kind of look at Kootenai County, I did a little extra math for you because I knew I was talking to you today. You have 32,000 too many people in your voter rolls. About 1 in 4 of the people in your rolls don't belong there. Right? And anybody who's done canvassing with the real voter rolls has noticed how dirty they are. And what did you say? In Montana, you were taking out about that many, right? About 1 in 4, 1 in 3 of the people in the rolls. They don't belong there. It's very predictable. I could just show this because I could spend time on this, but I'd rather not. I'd rather get to the solution. But I came here last time and showed you that I could predict how many people voted of every age in Kootenai County to a correlation coefficient of better than part per million, 1.000. How can I do that? Because Kootenai County votes exactly the same as every other county. How can that be, Dr. Frank? We're red up here. You think your elections are okay because you have conservative, good leaders in your county, but that's wrong. Your elections are centrally controlled. And as long as somebody else is controlling your election, that's it. You have to get back local control. How are we going to get back local control? So I call it the 7 steps. And I mentioned that already with the John Birch Society thing. And what we do is we form teams in multiple counties, and we find the fraud. We get their voter rolls formatted in certain ways. It makes it easy for you to find fraud in your own neighborhood. And then we organize that. Let me just play a hypothetical with you. What would you do if Canada invaded us today? Some people say we'd left. But if they invaded us, how am I doing on time, Glenn? Have I got 10 more minutes?
Yeah, you do.
Good. I'm about on schedule.
When I start walking out, like,
Yeah, okay. Well, I just need, because I want to finish up with something too, and I want to give myself time. So, what was I? Oh yeah. So- Canada invading us. Let's say Canada invades us. A lot of us will have an instinct. We'll run to the closet and get our ARs and run out there, right? And that's a good instinct, but it's the wrong strategy. Because if we're individually running out there with our rifles shooting the Canadians, we're going to lose. Because they're an organized effort coming in against us. You don't win against an organized effort with a disorganized effort. We have to have strategy. So what we do is we organize the counties, we have a strategy, we act in concert. That's how we're winning this around the country. Not by individuals with great data. I know, because I was one of them. I had all these great evidence and great strategy, and I'm out there telling everybody, look, look, look. That's not how we win. We win when the counties get organized, link elbows, and act together. That's what this is all about. So let me just remind you of something. Oh, by the way, I have to bring this up, because when I was here last time, boy, do I love you guys. I've been telling this story all over the country. What do you do when Antifa comes to town? Call the sheriff? No. You grab your rifle. You call your neighbors. You have gun to lane, baby. I've been telling your story all over the country. And as I've been doing that, there's like 30 other counties that I've been in where they did exactly this. And I've spoken to your sheriff about this. He actually recalled his deputies and sent the citizens out there. Brilliant. Who defended your county? Your sheriff? You defended your county. That's the biggest mistake we make in election integrity. Everybody thinks, oh, we found fraud. We're going to bring it to the Secretary of State.
Right.
Oh, we found fraud. We're going to take it to the legislature. Oh, we're going to take it to our county leaders. Wrong. You're the government. Start acting like it. Defend yourselves. You have the power. You just forgot. You've been conditioned over the years into thinking you have to comply with unconstitutional laws. You don't. America is an experiment in self-government. You need to be taking a stand. It doesn't take a majority to prevail. Just an irate, tireless minority keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. And as long as you remain uninvolved, like Plato said, one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. And that is exactly where we're at right now. You don't get involved, your legislature, your county boards, your school boards, you're full of inferior people. You have to re-engage. You have to start being the government again. You have to take back local control of your elections. I talk to people all the time, say how much you spend on your elections. Oh, we don't know. The commissioners don't even know. What's wrong with you? Are you the government or not? You need to know. So anyway, I'm going to cut to the chase here. So when it comes to the Second Amendment, we all get this. If the government says we have to turn our guns, what do we say?
No.
Pound sand, baby, come take them. Which end you want first? But when they say, give us your ballots, we surrender them without a fight. But our ballots are how we protect our guns. Our ballots are how we protect our children, our property, our liberty. You're just handing them over. Stop it. Stop doing that. It's your constitutional duty to defend your constitutional voice. If a law is unjust, a man has not only a right to disobey it, he's obligated to do so, Jefferson said. You have to step up. You have to be the government. You have to start acting like it and stop waiting for somebody else to fix your problem. It's you, we the government. See, I've been listening to you. I have to say, I'm a scientist. I did that for 40 years, and so I kind of have my own preconceived notions that were mostly wrong. But now that I've been on the road and I get to be around some of the best people in the country, I appreciate you, Glenn. I'm sorry for bringing that up. But let me just tell this one story, we'll call it. So, I was in a bar in northern Wisconsin, because there aren't any meeting places there, right, except the tavern. And people are like, what are you doing in the tavern, Dr. Frank? Well, gee, the revolution started in the churches and the taverns, right? That's the best place to be. Plus, in taverns, people are in a good mood. So everybody's drinking and whatnot. So about 200 people. It's a big meeting. And at the end, I'm standing at the front, and people are coming up the center aisle to take selfies with me and ask me questions. I enjoy that. That's fun. This beautiful couple came up to me, older couple. She put her hand on my shoulder, and the man put his hand on the other, and they said, "Dr. Frank, we want to pray for you." I said, "I love that. Please pray for me. I love it." But this lady, she's Pentecostal. And so she started praying, and man, she wasn't quitting. She was working up a ladder. She did louder and louder and louder. And as she got really loud, everybody else got quiet. And people started coming up, and it was like a prayer meeting. It was like an invitation. We had like 30 people up front putting hands on me. It was awesome. It was a wonderful moment. We were like deep in prayer, and she was really going, and she was like, "Hey, thank you, Lord, for giving us Dr. Frank." And then he's fighting the evil Goliath of election corruption and government corruption. And Lord, we just thank you for giving him such a big slingshot for fighting Goliath. And Lord, we just pray that you'll give him really big stones in a tavern. She said that. But we're all praying. And so nobody wants to laugh because we're like in the heat of prayer. But everybody, we would have laughed. So she finally wraps up her prayer. "In Jesus' name, amen." And she opens her eyes, and everybody's got contorted faces. And because we're desperately holding back our laughter. And she looks at me confused. And I said, "Well, you just asked God to give me really big stones." And of course, the whole place just roared in laughter. And she turned beet red. And it was a wonderful moment. In fact, I spoke in Michigan a month later. I was at some place, and she was in the audience. She said, "Yeah, that was me." So it's a real story. It really happened. But it made me think about this in a whole new way. I never thought about it this way before. When David went to the battlefield, he didn't originally go there to fight Goliath, remember? He went there to check information, to bring back to his dad, to bring him lunch, right? He goes out there, and what does he see? He sees a big oaf out in the middle of the field, insulting their God, insulting their nation. Sound familiar? And he goes to his brothers and he says, "What gives? Get out there and take care of business." And what did his brothers say? "You're a shepherd. Go back to the sheep." Sound familiar? So he didn't listen. And, long story short, he goes out into the battlefield and he stands in front of Goliath. And I like it that David didn't say, "I'm going to whip your butt today." He didn't do that. He said, "The battle is the Lord's." The battle is the Lord's. He took out the stone, got it Goliath in the head, down goes Goliath. He takes Goliath's own sword and cuts his head off. Then the Bible says, "Then the children of Israel rose up and chased the Philistines out of the land." What did it take? One David standing up, one county standing up, the people standing up. It's because they found their spine once they saw the momentum. That's the movement I'm trying to start in your state. We need to start the momentum, and other counties will join in. They're afraid at first, but you watch. We get a few of you that have got stones. You got to find your stones. Okay? Remember this kid in Tiananmen? Changes the whole world. All we need is to find our backbone and just start being the government again. We've forgotten that we are the government. I've got to finish this way. This is awesome.
Freedom is a fragile thing, and it's never more than one generation away from extinction. It is not ours by way of inheritance. It must be fought for and defended constantly by each generation, for it comes only once to a people. And those in world history who have known freedom and then lost it have never known it again.
Anybody know what that speech is from? Reagan's inauguration speech for governor of California. Okay? I don't remember in my lifetime constantly defending and fighting for my freedom. Most of my lifetime I was in a lab benefiting from the liberty and freedom that I had. And Let me show you the next one.
Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning. Because today, we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.
That's him in 2017. And I was watching that speech that day, and the first thought in my mind was, oh, I'm so glad Hillary isn't president. Right? And the second thought in my mind was, now I'm going to go golf, because Trump's going to fix the country. No, he was giving us back the power, and we didn't take it. Okay? All right, we got another chance. This is it, though. This is the second chance.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together.
He understands he cannot do this. If you're in the Trump slump, waiting for him to fix this problem, you're the problem. You need to wake up. You need to engage. He knows it. This is his tweet from August last year. He didn't say, I'm going to pass an executive order and fix everything. He said, I'm going to lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots, and also while we're at it, highly inaccurate, very expensive, and seriously controversial voting machines, etc., etc., etc. This is an essay for this guy. It's a long tweet. The most important thing he said was, I am going to lead a movement. Where's your movement, Idaho? Why didn't you give him something to lead? I'm free. I won't charge anything. I'll be glad to come help you get that going. I know how to do this. I've been doing it all over the country. Same in Washington. I'm happy to help. That's what I'm here for. Happy to do it. And I think I should stop because you're about to chase me off the stage, aren't you, brother? Okay. Thank you very much.